Let's go. Hello, Richard.
Hello.
Nice to catch up with you.
How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. Thank you for doing this therapist spotlight with me. So we're going to do a before and after, which is so you have to now kind of go into private practice at some point, which is good.
Uh-huh.
So thank you for doing that. But yeah, I know you did something completely different before you have decided to become a therapist. So I'd love to know what you did before and how that switch has come about, because it's completely different, isn't it?
It's completely different, and I have to say that I haven't actually made the switch yet.
Right.
So it's a work in progress. Um, I currently work in technical sales, and I probably will be doing for the foreseeable future. Obviously,
Yeah.
training to be a counsellor, it's quite a long journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I started this. I tried to have a thing. I've been asked a few times now why I've decided to become a therapist, and I still don't have a proper answer to that question.
Mm.
I kind of feel that I could make up certain answers, and I said this before actually on another podcast, but I don't feel that my answer would be accurate.
Mm. Has it always been a curiosity for you then, or?
It has in some ways. So again, just revisiting something else that I said recently, I've always been affected by mental health, if we want to get straight into it, probably from around the age of about maybe about 12 years old. And from the period of being from about 12 until I was about 20, I sort of almost had a bit of a downward spiral, and
Yeah.
then ended up with a diagnosis of depression. But it was a very weak diagnosis in the sense that I walked into a GP practice and came out with some antidepressants.
Yeah.
And that then I kind of labeled myself as somebody with depression. And this is a really short version of the story, but over the next few years, with the help of medication and a very small bit of psychotherapy, I did manage to start living what I would call a normal life.
Mm.
And I've had different careers. So I actually started off as painter and decorator, then electrician. Then I worked in the smart homes industry for rich people with big houses, and I work in doing lighting controls for hotels. I've had my own business, and now work for a manufacturer in technical sales. So I've just done all these different things.
Loads of different stuff, haven't you?
Yeah, and it's been fantastic, and I've really enjoyed it, and I'm hoping that it'll continue as well. But there's always been this other person, if you like, alongside me, which is somebody that suffers from depression and anxiety, and
Yeah.
and it's something I don't particularly talk about. Strangely enough, I seem to be able to talk about it in a public forum like this,
On a podcast, and you're fine.
on a podcast, or I can write about it or something like that. But actually, day to day, it's not something that I would really discuss. Um, and it doesn't actually stop me. On the whole, it doesn't stop me from functioning,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
something that's always there.
So has that led you to be more curious about psychology and counselling and these talk? Have you found therapy useful for you and now kind of think you want to kind of support others in that way?
Yeah, in some ways. So I've not really had any therapy myself. I had a brief 3 or 4 sessions of psychotherapy when I was about 21, and I don't really remember much about it. In fact, the only thing I do remember about it is that it wasn't very useful to me. So
Right.
that's that's not particularly a good thing to remember about it. But I've always been interested in people. I've always been somebody that people talk to as well,
Right. You've
wherever I
got a
go.
lovely calm manner. You have got that kind of, yeah, you're an easy person, definitely.
Well, that's the demeanor, but inside it's probably a different story. But people have always talked to me about various things, and I always feel as well, whichever job I've been doing, it's almost like I'm an observer, and I'm in that world, and I talk to different people and sort of try and figure out why you're here, what you're doing, what do you think about,
Mm.
what motivates you to come to work, and I've always found myself having these different conversations with people, and always getting into that big sort of conversation if people are open to it. And then another thing that's been an important thing in my life, the sort of interest in psychology and self-help and things, that actually started from listening to books about listening to audio books about sales and business and marketing.
Yeah.
Because I'm not a sales guy. Well, I'm a sales guy now, but that isn't my natural kind of thing, selling.
It's a real skill, isn't it?
It is, and it's something that luckily I'm not too bad at. And I realized quite quickly that I didn't have to know all the answers. I didn't really need to do that much in some sense. I just had to listen to people and let things unfold, and then it would either happen or it wouldn't happen, and on we go, sort of thing. And then another thing is that part of my work, I spend a lot of time driving up and down the country and visiting different people. So I've had literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours to listen to audio books and podcasts, and I always just make a beeline for anything to do with psychology or maybe sort of self-help, although kind of moved away from those a little bit. But yeah, that's my general
real pull, and you've got that curiosity. I think all therapists, because on the other podcast I do ask the therapist, I always ask why, because I think it's such an unusual job to do, isn't it, to be a therapist? And what I find when I ask that is that people always have that curiosity. So
I definitely
really
have that curiosity, and it's the thing is why do you want to be a therapist question. It's like, I suppose the simple answer is I don't know that I do, but I'm kind of being pulled towards it, and I'm doing the training, and I'm just going to see what happens,
see where it takes you, and see what unfolds. That's a nice way to approach it, really. It takes the pressure off, doesn't it? And And whereabouts are you on your journey? I'd love to know what course you're doing and how far in you are.
Yeah, so I did the introductory course at Stockport College. So it was called an Introduction to Counselling. And one of the reasons I did that was just that I was just searching around for something else I could do outside of work. And my wife told me that if you didn't have A levels, which I don't have any A levels, you could do that for free. So I was looking on the internet, and this course came up, an Introduction to Counselling, and I thought, okay, that's interesting, and it was free to do it. So I went on that, and I didn't really have any expectations, but it was interesting for me because as soon as we got into some of the lessons and we started talking, I was like, this is totally what I'm interested in.
Wow, yeah.
And it was like, I kind of felt like I was in the right place, and I could have conversations with people that you can't usually have those type of conversations with. And it was one of those things that I came away with way more questions than answers, and it just completely, in some sense, it completely expanded my mind and just went, wow, there's this whole world out there that I didn't know about, and it's actually accessible to me. So it's not like I've decided to be a clinical psychiatrist or something like that. There's a much easier route into it. Although it's not that easy, but there is a slightly easier route.
You enjoying it? How are you finding the training?
Yeah, good. So I'm now at Warrington College.
All right.
And the reason I've moved there is because they had an evening class, and obviously I'm doing my daytime job. So I'm doing a level 3 course there, and we've done about 5 sessions so far, and it's good. Again, it's like a new mix of people, but people are open to talking about big things, and you're straight into doing listening skills, which is really good. And people just open up to you. And that's like, it's such a good feeling when somebody just relaxes and they'll just start talking to you. So I really enjoy that side of it.
Yeah, it's fascinating. People's minds, all our minds are just absolutely fascinating. And it's that connection with people as well, isn't it? Is there anything you're finding tricky on the training, or is it?
Yeah, I mean, I actually find I can talk about counselling and theory, and I'm happy to talk about all the big questions. But what I've not that quickly learned is that when we get assignments, I think I'm just overthinking everything.
Right.
And what I've realized is that actually they just want you to say certain things and write certain sentences, which means they can give you a tick and you can get that particular point. So the question might be, what are boundaries, was something that we did a couple of weeks ago. So really what you just need to do is a bullet point of, don't text me outside of these hours, and these are the time constraints and everything. But I tend to sit there and philosophize over what are boundaries. And
Yeah, just as you said that, I could feel myself getting drawn into, well, what are they? And I know that, depending on how you're trained, it really varies, especially because I'm CBT, it's quite structured and formal. And then the compassion focused therapy work that I've done, it's very much like there's two humans in the room, and and you use that sense of common humanity, so that shifts boundaries. So well, what it means for one therapist to another is, there's a huge continuum and spectrum of boundaries, isn't there?
Yeah, and I think I found that difficult, and I've had to quickly almost pull it together and go, you don't need to think about that, or now's not the time to ask that question and be all philosophical. It's just get the points or the grade and move on to the next thing. But then that's the side of it that I love. So I do want to talk about those things. But I've also learned that in the college environment is to stop asking questions because they need to get on and get through the lesson, and I'm kind of putting my hand up again. So can we talk about what boundaries are?
But that's how you can use your Substack, isn't it? Your lovely writing. You can put stuff down there and kind of use that space to kind of share those ideas. And
yeah, no, definitely. And Substack's been something that it kind of came about through you, actually, from listening to your podcast. So
which podcast was it? Was it the Ask the Therapist? Is that what you found first?
It was Ask the Therapist, I think. And I think you interviewed somebody that had set up a Substack thing.
Sarah Tasker, yeah.
Sarah Tasker, that's it. Sarah Tasker. Yeah. So I listened to that. Then I had a brief look at it, and I joined your Therapist Corner Substack thing. And it was actually, your encouragement and Sarah Tasker, and I thought I'll give this a go, and it's been really good. I've not done that many posts, but what it's enabled me to do is take a concept or a question and actually spend some time with it and try and condense it into something that's useful, hopefully useful. I mean, it's useful for me because I have a summary of an answer to a question or something like that. So it's a
lovely platform, isn't it, to kind of share those ideas and discuss them. And it's a very new platform, but more and more therapists are coming on, aren't they? I'm starting to notice that, I'm starting to really see it now. So it's really exciting that we can get those conversations going.
It's great as well, because if I was just going to college, I wouldn't have that community.
Yeah.
So I imagine it's quite isolating. I mean, you'd have your college friends and stuff like that, but they're just people that you see once a week. But it's nice to just dip in and out of Substack and see what you're doing. And there's lots of other people that are members of Therapist Corner. And so that's been really great. It's a really nice community.
Yeah, we're really enjoying it. And what's your plan after the training then, after level 3? Is there a level? There's a level 4, isn't
there? There's a level 4, yeah. I mean, I haven't thought... in some senses I've thought a lot about it, and in others I haven't, because the big problem, it's more like just the technical problem of how am I going to fit it all in, because once I've done level 3, the level 4 is a 2-year course. You have to do a full day in college once a week.
Oh, right, okay.
And then you have to do, over the 2 years, you have to do 100 hours voluntary placement thing. And then you have to go to therapy yourself, and you also have to go to supervision. So there's suddenly a lot of time, and I don't know how, I honestly don't know how that's going to work at this point.
But sometimes you just need to go, you're going in the direction you want to, and it will unfold. And if it becomes really important to you, it will just happen. That's why when I trained in the compassion focused therapy, I was like, how am I ever going to do this? But it all came together, and I did. And it was a huge commitment, and you just take week by week.
Yeah, and I'm hoping there's some good lessons to be learned, that might be useful when I start out as a counsellor, because I think career transition is probably a big thing. I mean, I've been in the same job for 13 or 14 years, and you do become reliant on it, and you become reliant on a salary. And over time, you can have the problem of thinking, yeah, I'm not really capable of doing anything else. This is all I know. And then you've got, age is always against you. We all get older, unfortunately. And in the job market, with the best will in the world, it is, as you get older, it becomes more difficult.
Mm.
So if you found yourself looking for work, I'm 47 currently, and if you found yourself out of a job at 50, it's actually really difficult to get something good.
Yeah.
And so there's like this whole thing about perhaps helping people look into the future about what they're going to do and how they're going to manage either their way out of their career, or what are they going to do as they progress through life, which is something else I'm interested in.
Yeah, we're all going to work for so much longer, aren't we?
Yeah.
We probably will have a couple of careers.
Yeah. And there's that saying that if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. And at the beginning of this year, when I sat down and thought, right, what am I going to do with my life? And I'd not thought about counselling or anything like that. And I actually decided that my goal should be to look at how I'm going to retire.
Oh, yeah.
So I picked an age. I thought I'd quite like to retire at 55. That sounds like
That'd be nice, yeah.
reasonable number to shoot for. And I did a few calculations and looked into it and realised that to have an average kind of retirement, I'd need to have a £600,000 pension pot, and I'd have like 6 or 7 years to pull it together. So I thought, well, that's tricky. and that resulted in really seriously thinking about how I could do that, and do that within the world and the industry that I work in, to almost having like a bit of a mental breakdown about the whole thing, and realizing that, one, that's not going to happen, and two, actually I don't want to retire. There's this whole world out there of things that I want to do. So it's quite exciting. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah, I'm going for more of the avoidance approach to pension.
Oh, right, okay, interesting.
That's what I'm doing. But yeah, I think I will be working for a little bit longer. So do you think private practice is in your plans? Do you think, you don't know what it'll look like, but you might do a combination for a while?
I might do a combination. I mean, I don't actually have plans to leave my job. I have 3 children, and my children are getting a little bit older. I have a big mortgage still for my age, and so I've got serious financial commitments, and that's not going to change. So the idea of just jumping out of what I'm doing now into private practice, I can't quite see how that would work. I'm quite practical in some ways. So I've got a dreamy side, and then I've actually got the practical side.
Yeah, you need to see how it's going to work.
Yeah, but if in my little sort of fantasy world, all my house is in order, my garden's pretty, and I'm really relaxed, and I write articles about psychology, and then I have the odd client popping in to see me and have a nice chat.
Yeah. Good luck with that if you get that. I'm the first to sign up to that Substack of that therapist lifestyle. How have you found coming to the Q&As? Because you're kind of getting a look into, we're all kind of in it. Most of us are in it. I think there's a few people just setting up and starting out, but I'm really curious from somebody from a different profession looking in on us therapists. What are your thoughts?
Well, I don't have any real big thoughts about it. It's been really just interesting to me to like the opportunity to glimpse into the reality of what you all do.
Has it?
Absolutely. And again, just going back to before, saying that, I could just do this college course and go there once a week and write some assignments and things like that, but it wouldn't give me any true sense of what I'm about to enter into. So it's a gift really to be able to do that. I think what's been an eye-opener, I don't know why I'm surprised at this, but obviously the financial side of it and running a business, which is what your whole thing is about, it's key to being able to be a good therapist.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then talking about fees and stuff, there's this weird juxtaposition between sort of charging people and helping people, and it's maybe a little bit uncomfortable. So that's something that I've given a lot of thought to. I don't really have any answers to it, but I remember it was Sophie saying when we were on a Q&A, we were talking about how do you set your fees. I think she said something really insightful, which was or really helpful. She said you need to know how much do you need to earn to have a comfortable life, and then that's how much to charge.
Work backwards from there, because unless it's
so
sustainable.
good.
Yeah. And is that, I mean, and Sophie comes from the corporate world, a very different perspective, which I think is, so useful, because there is something about, care should be free. And even if you see a therapist in the NHS, it's not free. It costs really, really expensive. And I just think we need to value it. And it's a job where you use your mind for the work you do. And so you do need space. You can't do the job while while burnt out or exhausted or worried about money. You just can't do it from that place. You have to be in a really good place yourself so that you can be focused on your client and not internally worrying about lifestyle and stuff. But it is a tricky area for therapists. I know lots of therapists really struggle with what to charge. And is that very different from your world? And
definitely, yeah. I mean, I work in sales, and it's like,
and what do you sell? Is it light fitting,
lighting control? So if you to just quickly say what it is we do, if you went into a multi-million-pound big house, they don't just have light switches on the wall, they have very fancy scene setting things. So you press a button and the lighting makes the room look fantastic, and you press another button and it totally changes the look of the room, like for an evening setting or something.
Oh, that's what I'd like.
Well, we could talk about that after. But it is with that sort of thing, it's like it's a really expensive thing, and you're not trying to help somebody out in the sense of how can I give it away. And I notice in therapy, and it's so interesting because we're trying to help people, and that's at the core of what we're trying to do. And this isn't within Therapist Corner, but just other counsellors and therapists that I've spoken to, there seems to be this drive towards reducing fees and doing somebody a favour and putting themselves very much second and saying it doesn't matter about me. I'm not interested in money. I'll do it for free if I can. And I understand all that, and I sort of respect where somebody's coming from. But just to go back to what Sophie was saying, which is, what do you need to have a comfortable life? And I'm not talking about mega wealth or anything like that. I mean, you wouldn't do this if that's what the aim was, but you need to be comfortable so that you can look after yourself. And you also need to be able to look after your family and pay your bills before you start trying to help other people.
You absolutely do. And then you can make a much bigger impact. I actually worked with a supervisor who, was really struggled to charge, and I actually had to pull away from them because I was taking them away from their family and stuff, and I found it really, really uncomfortable. And I chose to go with a supervisor that would charge me their hourly rate because I just didn't want to feel bad for taking their time. So, it doesn't always work like that, does it?
It's a tricky one, isn't it? Money's always it's always going to be a tricky one. But I think
what do you sell? Do you feel they're not concerned about charging like really good prices? And
well, I mean, there's a whole podcast we could do on it, but it's really interesting to me because people say something that often comes up is that somebody will say it's not about money. They've got millions of pounds or whatever. It's not about money. And I think, well, it's always about money for a start. So I've heard that one before. And but I mean, sometimes we're dealing with wealthy people, but a lot of the times I'm dealing with electrical contractors who are involved in these things, and I'm really keen on them being able to make a decent living, because a lot of them are young guys, they've got young children, they're trying to get on the property ladder and everything. So when I see some of these people trying to give their services away and always trying to save other people money, I'm kind of like, well, what are you doing about your own circumstances? And sometimes it doesn't occur to people that they need to look after themselves first, even though they're running a business.
Yeah.
It's really interesting, actually.
Yeah. In the book I'm writing, I'm really trying to talk about kind of wearing different hats and seeing the business as a separate identity than you. It's not you charging an hourly rate. Your business has to take an hourly rate to be sustainable.
Yes.
And then you can, I think you can do things like, with Substack, we're able to charge a really low fee, but help more people and do digital products, and people are putting courses out there, but you need to first have your business up and running and sustainable.
Yeah.
And that business pays your wage. So it's not trying to separate it out a little bit.
Yeah.
You're wearing a couple of hats.
It's that phrase, isn't it? Put your own house in order, kind of thing.
Yes. Yeah.
And that comes back to me. Whatever I seem to do in life, I always, because you have all these fantastical ideas about what you could do in the world, and how you could help people and go off in all these directions, and then it's like, put your own house in order.
Absolutely.
And it's nice and grounding. But it's always going to be a difficult one, and I'm not pretending that I have any idea about how best to sort out finances in the therapy world, because I really have no clue at all. But that would be how I feel about it.
And there might not be ever, there's so many ways it can be done, but it's just I just think it's good that therapists are starting to have this conversation more and kind of discussing it. I think that's really useful. So we've not put you off private practice then?
You've not put me off yet.
So, and what are you most looking forward to when you kind of finish your training, do you think?
Well, I mean, I'm probably terribly naive about all this stuff, but I'm really looking forward to doing what it is that I'm training to do, which is sitting down and being able to just listen to somebody.
Do you have any worries or nerves about that, or?
I don't really. I don't. I'm kind of comfortable with the idea. Well, at college, when we do listening skills, everybody gets a bit jumpy about having to be the listener, and I think, oh, that's interesting. I find that bit, I'm quite comfortable with that bit. The bit I forget about is that at this stage we're supposed to demonstrate what do you call it, active listening skills, so minimal encouragers, reflection, and there's probably some others as well that I've forgotten. And I find that as soon as somebody starts talking to me, I kind of forget about that stuff and I just listen to them.
And I think that's right. I think you need that framework behind you, but I think it's about attunement with the person in front of you, and then I think it all flows naturally. I think
and luckily after these listening sessions, people have said, oh yeah, you used a minimal encourager, or you did a reflect, and I'm like,
as though it's all purposeful.
like it was planned. But I actually do, I just go, I'm not going to think about that, I'm just going to act. And also somebody's actually telling you about real stuff.
Yes.
So I'm kind of thinking, I'm actually going to give you the time of day and listen to what you're saying to me. So I don't have any worries about that as such. I guess my biggest worry, again, in my sort of fantasy world, I'm having a nice chat with somebody about everyday problems and maybe some low-level depression or anxiety, that kind of thing. But unfortunately, terrible things happen to people, and there's a lot of pain, obviously, that's going to be brought into these sessions, and it's something that I have no experience of. I'm extremely naive about the sorts of things that probably happen to people. so it's kind of, for me, that's all baby steps, and I'm going to see what I can handle and where that takes me. I have no idea. So that would be the most sort of an area of concern for me, in a sense. And you think, well, that is the job, dealing with these big
You're not
traumas.
on your own either, because you'll always have a clinical supervisor to take this stuff too, and that's so it's the network you build around you, isn't it? And I think
It is,
therapists initially, especially, and throughout, I have a lot of clinical supervision. I find it so valuable, and sometimes I might not have too much to take to supervision, so I'll just talk through a case, and then in talking through it, like, it just opens up and you see things so differently. So it's not doing it on your own, I suppose.
Yeah, that's good. And in America, we'll probably talk about this in a minute, but the podcast that I'm doing with the guy.
Yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah, well, that's all just, it's been a bit of a strange year. So I started off on this journey and didn't know where it was going to take me. I started putting some articles on Substack, and off the back of that, I was contacted by a guy, Cody Northup, who has a Substack publication called Everyday Therapist.
Yeah, I
And he
subscribe.
just put in one of the comments, he said, maybe we should do a podcast. And because of the kind of frame of mind I'm in at the moment, I was like, okay.
Fantastic.
So it's just, I mean, it's really been completely random in some ways. And we met on a Zoom call like this and had a brief conversation about what we might talk about. And then we just decided to give it a go. And so we met a week later, hit record, and did our first.
And he's in America, isn't he?
He's in America. He's in Utah. So the rough idea was we were going to do the differences between the US and UK.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it will continue to be that subject. And if we're both honest, which we are about it, we don't know what we're doing at all. So we've jumped on. We've done five recordings now. Well, the fourth one's been released today, actually, and it's just been really interesting, really nice to just talk to somebody about therapy. And Cody is a guy as well, and most of the people that I've met so far are women.
Well,
so
that's really nice as well, isn't it? Yeah.
It is. So it's been really good. Not sure exactly where it's going to take us, but again, we're just seeing what unfolds, really.
Yeah, it's very exciting, and I shall put all the links to everything in the show notes of this, so people can go and subscribe and have a listen. I've listened to the first one so far and really enjoyed it, so I'm looking forward to that on it. And I'm just very excited for all these therapists coming onto Substack and sharing what goes on behind Therapist Door and having these conversations, that it's not just a place for writers, that all sorts of people are coming on.
Yeah, it's really good. It's good for therapists, I think, because there's a lot of, as a therapist, there's a lot of thinking to do, isn't there, about different subjects, and also you can't. There's such a big landscape of things that you could start looking into. So it's nice to be able to dip in and out of other people's Substack posts to see what they're thinking about. Like, somebody that springs to mind is it Sheena Ridings?
Yes, the pain therapist. Yeah.
So again, I mean, you could spend a lifetime learning about pain therapy, or you could choose to do something else. But it's nice that I can have a look at her posts and see what she's thinking currently about that kind of thing, and
sharing some really useful resources. Where are you going to take your publication? And yours is called On Becoming a Therapist, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that was the initial idea. So the idea was, if nobody's seen it yet, was that it'd be a useful resource for people that were training to be counsellors. And I think I started off by addressing certain things that were coming up at college and trying to make sense of them and put them into some sort of useful piece of work that somebody could read. But it's immediately gone off a tangent.
That's nice, though.
And I don't really know what it's going to be. I think that there's so many good resources out there as well. There's something called counselingtutor.com, and they're absolutely fantastic. If you're at college and studying,
Yeah.
You can look on their website and download a PDF about a certain subject. So in some ways, that's what I plan to do, but it's already been done before. And then
But
this podcast.
it's not been done by you though, or your take.
Well,
So,
yeah, yeah.
it's just, you will give whatever you do a different perspective, won't it?
Yeah, and I think my perspective will be more, I've read what you should think and how you should act, and I find that really tricky and I don't understand it. So
Yeah.
that would probably be my take on it.
Yeah.
But that's not helpful if you're just trying to pass your college.
No.
That is not helpful at all.
Fantastic. So where do you see yourself a year from now? Where?
Well, I'm really hoping. I mean, I try not to ever force anything too much, because I think that can lead to its own problems. But currently, if things worked out the way I want them to work out, I would be on the level 4 course.
Yeah.
I would somehow solve that financial conundrum, because I'd probably have to have a day off work a week, which is tricky.
Wow.
And then also I would like to find a nice placement, and that's something else that I've started thinking about, which who to approach for a placement, whether that be somebody like Mind. I know somebody from my family has had a good experience of Mind, which was something that made me a little bit interested in this whole thing. And then I'm also, sometimes people say you should look at what you most fear. And one of the things I most fear, for some strange reason, is prison. I'm just like, I've always had it, to me, it's just such a terrifying prospect that they lock people up in buildings. And I know there's good reason for it. I'm not saying so. I've always been interested in potentially working with prisoners.
I worked in forensics for a while. I almost
you?
took that path, of going into forensics, but it was enhanced pay, and I just thought, gosh, if I start off my career there, then I'm really going to struggle just working in a normal hospital. So I didn't. But it's fascinating. Everybody's story was really tragic for why they were there. Yeah.
I know, like years and years ago, this was like decades ago, when I was a decorator, painter and decorator, and there's a big other story, but I lived in Leeds for a short time, and I applied for a job. There was a job going at Armley Jail, which was to go in and teach prisoners painting and decorating skills. I thought I could do that, but I was like, I was like 21 years old, and they would have like killed me.
Not at all. You probably would have absolutely loved it, and they would have taught you lots.
But I just thought that's something that I could do, because I know how to do it. I'm sure that I could teach them, and it's a way of somebody actually trying to get some skills, so that when they get out of prison, they might have some sort of a chance. So these interests in people and everything, that's, as I said at the beginning, that's always been something that's been encircling me.
Yeah, it's fantastic. But I'm not sure you have to do the thing you fear as your first kind of thing. So,
well, yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I know. I don't know. I'm really not sure where to look, actually.
I think I hear this a lot. People struggle with these placements, and it's a shame. You'd think that there would be so many opportunities, because the waiting list in the NHS for kind of any kind of support is huge. No, it's like over a year. And I was talking to somebody in Ireland, and they're 4 years, and I was just like, oh my gosh, and that's for anybody to get any support at all. So it could be utilised more, couldn't it?
This is another challenge with, I know you asked me things that I'm finding tricky, and as I've started to look into the whole world of counselling and psychotherapy and scratch the surface, I've seen this epidemic and this absolutely huge problem that there is, and that's followed up with an anxiety of I can't do anything about it. You're not even going to scratch the surface, are you?
But it's the stone creates the ripple, creates the wave, and you're doing something, and you will do something, and and just focus on what you can do,
yeah,
and being, you know, as we're part of bigger communities, and the digital era is able to connect us all, like you're talking to
yeah.
somebody in America, you know, that's how we're going to get to solutions, isn't it? By having conversations and all working together and figuring stuff out, you know.
Yeah, and even though this probably contradicts what I was saying before, we were talking about the financial side of it. I am definitely interested in looking into how we could help more people for less money, which is something that I know that you're interested in as well, because it's kind of a bugbear of mine that any self-improvement, whether it's like mental health or fitness or nutrition, it's always just for people with money. Everybody else gets left behind. And yeah, perhaps it sounds like a little bit of a cliche saying that, but I just feel it's so important that these things like nutrition, fitness, mental health, if everybody could be pushed along a little bit and helped a bit, even if it's just a bit, you know, everybody would be better off.
Yeah, and I think Substack is one way, but I think therapists, like we were discussing, have to look after themselves, get their own business
Yeah,
secure, stable, financially stable. And then most therapists are really tired. You know, it's so hard work to do continuous one-to-ones, but
yeah,
we can all do some. But if we could do a Substack like Sheena's doing, online courses, we could get a lot of information, a lot of stuff should be taught in schools, especially CBT stuff. It's like
yeah.
when I was doing the training, I was like, oh my God, like managing worry, it transformed how I worry.
Mm,
And I was
mm,
like, why did I not know this at school?
yeah,
You know, and that's a workshop I do regularly for corporate people, and it's getting that information out there. There are lots of basic information that we can get out there, and creating communities, different ways of
yeah.
supporting each other. But I think it starts with us, doesn't it? Having
It
good,
does.
solid businesses. And
It
you know,
does.
what worries me is that there are these companies coming up at the side, you know, creating directories and stuff, and
Mm,
paying therapists really low rates, and but
mm.
getting for referrals, and I think that stifles
It
that.
is worrying that side of it, because it gives that kind of what's the word? It can make things feel a little bit dodgy as well. You know, if people are getting bad therapy and they're not paying much for it.
Yeah,
Another thing I'm interested in, if I was able to support myself and look after myself, is then perhaps going into schools and talking to young people,
that'd be fantastic.
saying, you know, just hopefully reaching out to a few people and saying, look, if you think that you're not going to make anything of yourself, you know, think again. You can actually do it, but you need to take some responsibility for yourself. You need to learn how to manage anxiety and low mood, and you need to get some sleep and eat properly, and like, you know, you can do something.
Yeah,
And
it's a real lots of need, isn't there, in the schools? And I think there are a lot. I do see some teenagers, and the way they talk about mental health is, it just blows my mind. It's completely different from when I was at school. So they're open to it. They're all having the discussions.
yeah,
Stigma's really coming down. So it's an really
yeah,
exciting time.
stigma's coming down, but then they also have the tricky thing of being told that whatever they are is like enough, and that their problems aren't their fault and things, and maybe they are and maybe they're not, but there's also this element of, actually, you do need to take some responsibility
Yeah, it
for
does.
yourself.
We have to cultivate our mind, and we
Yeah,
have tricky brains that we have responsibility for.
yeah.
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
wish somebody had told me that.
Oh, well, and that's a lovely, powerful place to come from, isn't it? That this is the stuff that I wish I'd
Yeah,
been told and had explained to me. Yeah, because that's really powerful when it's from a lived experience, most definitely. Yeah. And being a man as well, because there's not enough men, is there, in the kind of therapy world as yet?
well, yeah, I haven't met many, and it does feel like a woman's world, and that's great, and that's actually good for me, because I've been stuck in a man's world, and an industry that's really terribly male dominated, and that, you know, I've been doing that for a lot of time,
Yeah.
and it does have an effect on your outlook on the world. Of course it
Oh,
does.
yeah,
You
of
couldn't-
course it does. The most successful businesses are actually whether they're the most diverse in all areas. So we need to get diversity across the
yeah,
board, don't we? And yeah, in the therapy world's one of those.
yeah. But I think like men, sorry, I shouldn't be speaking on behalf of all men, but they've got a
Well,
lot to answer for in some sense, and like, you know, in being in this world that's predominantly women, you kind of feel a little bit like, I don't want to be coming in and telling, you know, start mansplaining therapy to people.
we'll let you know. On behalf of women, we'll let you know.
Yeah, so I'm very like, you know, careful about what I say, and you know.
Another business idea is I think I can see you putting your light systems in therapy rooms.
I could do that.
I think
As
that's
long as I
a
don't have to actually do it. I mean, I can tell you what to do.
sell it to us.
I
Yeah.
can sell it to
You'd
you. I can't
like
actually
it.
do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on today. I think it's going to be so valuable. I know there's lots of people exactly where you are, and there isn't much, like you found, there's not that much out there around these kind of conversations. So, and especially for me being a few years in, it's lovely to kind of get to know you and see things from your perspective, because it's constantly shaping how we think about things. So it's great having you part of Therapist Corner.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.